Thunder! Thunder! What are you looking at, nerd? Huh?
Here we go. Brian Hinton.
And I'm Brian Hinton.
And I'm Frederick Philip von Weiss. And thank you so much for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do.
And do tech
Good.
Nice. We're doing well that time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show. If you can, please go to the notification bell and subscribe. Remember, every time you click the notification bell, Brian Hinton gets his wings. Brian, who do we have for a... oh, yeah, we should talk about...
Yeah, we'd like to thank Auth0. Auth0 is this season's sponsor. They make it easy for developers to build a custom, secure, and standards-based login, unified login, and authentication as a service. Try them out. Go to right there, auth0.com today. Also, check out their YouTube and Twitch under the username Auth0 with some great developer resources and streams. And last but not least is Avocado Labs. I love that name. An online destination that their developer advocates run, organizing some great meetups. Thank you, Auth0.
Yeah, thanks, Auth0. And let's go ahead and welcome our guest. We have an amazing guest today. We have, let me read all these points correctly. We have art director, writer, designer, developer, anthropologist Chimera. I think I'm saying Chimera correctly.
Yeah.
And UX designer, Maggie Appleton. Welcome to the show, Maggie. Really appreciate you being here with us.
Thanks for having me on. I'll also say I'm a mediocre version of all of those things listed, so don't expect I'm not an expert in like 8 fields.
Well, you are a Chimera, so I imagine you have some kind of understanding of these things. So, hey, how are things been for you? How's the COVID situation going on in your side of the world?
It's not too bad. So I'm here in London, and we got out of our more stringent lockdown like 2 weeks ago, and the weather aligned perfectly. So it's been like 24 degrees, which I can't translate. Someone will have to like 80.
80, yeah.
In Fahrenheit, I think, ever since lockdown lifted about 2 weeks ago. So we're still, you can't go out in groups of like more than 30 or more than 6 inside, but the fact cafes are open is an enormous change for us. And we have restaurants again, like it's been really wonderful.
You on full lockdown yourself the past year, or like what was your situation like?
Yeah, we England went in and out of lockdown a bit, but they got pretty strict around, it was like a couple weeks before Christmas, maybe it was like mid-November, we went into pretty hard lockdown, the sort where like nothing's open but grocery stores and pharmacies, and we've been in hard lockdown since then. Yeah, but vaccinations are rolling out, so like I got my first one last week. They're starting to vaccinate people in their 30s and 20s right now, so yeah, it's happening.
What were you like? Did you have the sore arm?
Yeah,
and what vaccination did you actually get?
Oh yeah, I'm curious.
Pfizer. So everyone under 40 here, they're not giving them AstraZeneca. They're giving them Pfizer just in case.
I'm Team Pfizer too.
Yeah, same. Yeah. How did all this actually affect your life and affect your work at your company and maybe other things that you're doing too?
Yeah, honestly, I'm very privileged and lucky in the company I work for, Egghead.io, we've been remote first since day one. So I started working for them 5 years ago, and everyone else is based in the US. They're mostly in Washington State. We have some people in Portland. And yeah, we've always just worked remotely. I've moved countries about 5 times since starting to work for them, but finally settled back down in London. So yeah, when COVID happened, I mean, it sucked. I had to give up my co-working space and move into my small London flat, which is now my bedroom and office and hangout space, and everything all in one. But work-wise, I got very fortunate. They didn't change much of my day-to-day work.
Yeah, I think the tech industry, we're pretty lucky in that regard to have the ability and blessed to not have to worry about those sort of things like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what let's talk about a little bit about what you do, Maggie. Let's talk about your day-to-day. What exactly do you do at Egghead?
Well, we're a small team, so we're the kind where you sort of do whatever needs to be done. But I'm sort of vaguely in charge of anything that is to do with art direction, visual design, design fairly generally. So I have one other designer works on the team who's an incredible unicorn who knows like everything from React to front end UI and really covers that realm really well. And I work more on art direction, visual design, and then I help do UX design too. So thinking more through user flows and experiences and what someone needs to see in a certain context and copywriting considerations. So I'm sort of on the two ends of the spectrum, right? If you kind of usually have UX on one end and then UI stuff in the middle and then like illustration and visual design on the other, I kind of hit the two ends and skip the middle.
You're a little bit of a developer as well too, right?
Yeah, I call myself a very mediocre developer, or it's like a hobby. But the company I work for teaches front-end web development. So we teach JavaScript, React, Vue, Angular, all kind of the classic Node, hot new JavaScript frameworks as a video tutorial platform. So by working there, I just started playing around with React and playing around with JavaScript. I knew basic HTML and CSS from being a teenager on the internet, and like customizing my Neopets page and my MySpace CSS profile.
Nice.
But never took it seriously and didn't think I was terrible at math. So I went, I can't do programming because I'm crap at math. But then, started picking it up and playing around with it. And of course, I love the, animations and like what would be data viz, but without the data. So playing around with SVG shapes in D3, but without like anything to do with Excel spreadsheets. I really love fun web development. It's much more just kind of about the frivolous, like visual play of it.
Yeah, I'm curious too about the anthropology side. Like, do you have a background in that? Like, what's your tell us more about that.
That's maybe the weird bit that anthropology is.
Developer designer anthropology.
I studied cultural anthropology for my undergraduate degree.
Oh, nice.
I did like a liberal arts school in the US.
Yeah.
Which was great. And I found anthropology and immediately was like, I've been waiting for this. Like, this is exactly the kind of stuff I love. It's all just cultural analysis and trying to understand, the variation in the ways cultures can express themselves all across the world and why we develop certain traditions or rituals or beliefs and kind of what like purposes those serve for people.
Yeah.
So I majored in that as an undergraduate, and then of course graduated and was like, cool, I have like an anthropology degree. Who would like to hire me?
So has that helped you at all in any of your like either the code or design side? Like, what does it contribute for you?
Yeah, I'll say right after I graduated, I went into web design and graphic design because that was employable.
Of course, anthropology to design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually very natural. It seems that obviously what you're doing with digital anthropology, but it seems almost like a very natural transition for maybe almost anybody to go down that route because it empowers your work so much and. With metaphor design and being able to explain these concepts, it's very advantageous.
Yeah, and it's funny too that like it sort of came back around with UX design right now. It's like very similar to anthropology. It's kind of come full circle. But up until like 3 or 4 years ago, I'd never really heard of UX design. I mean, it's fairly new in the span of human history, let's say. It's been around I think for like 3 or 4 decades at this point as like any kind of official industry. So once I realized that UX designers were just sort of like anthropologists in disguise, I started being like, I think I'm going to hang out with you people more because it seems like you're like reading all the same theorists that I read and you're like pulling in all the same material. So I'm very much kind of leaning back into my anthropological roots now that UX design is a thing.
Maybe it would help for the audience if you just kind of describe what, for the people that might not understand this concept, what digital anthropology is and how you employ it every day at your work and use it with your work.
Sure, yeah, because it's definitely not an obvious thing, right? Because anthropology a lot of people will even think like, that is like digging up old human bones, right? And dinosaur bones, like analyzing, which is absolutely a part of the field. There's archaeologists who fall under the umbrella of anthropology because we sort of have physical, biological, linguistic, and cultural are kind of the four main disciplines or branches of the discipline. So I studied cultural, which is, again, the way people behave in cultures. And digital anthropology is specifically just looking at anything that involves, well, like digital objects, so anything that is mediated, we would say, by things that run on binary code and computational logic. So that, includes the entire internet. So it kind of gives you a broad span of things to study. But digital anthropologists tend to study the cultural elements of that. So, how do people socialize in online spaces, and how do we understand computational objects as, partners in our rituals, or how they, mediate the way that we decide to structure our life and what is valuable to us. I mean, it's kind of a broad range of things. People study AI, machine learning is like a big topic at the moment. I can't say I officially use it in any direct way, like on a day-to-day basis at work. It's very much like I spend a lot of time in the JavaScript world looking at them being like, you guys are being like kind of tribal with your whole like alignment with frameworks, like
I like that.
really care about like what stickers are on your shirts, and how you're like signaling to the other tribal members, like, hey, I'm like a Vue person.
It does matter. Stickers matter.
Yeah,
people love stickers.
It is weird.
So I'm very much like a sideline anthropologist at the moment, just sort of analyzing things from Twitter threads or that sort of stuff, but nothing that's sort of on a day-to-day level that intense.
I'm curious too about like when you went into that, did you have like maybe a mental picture of where you would actually end up when you started the degree, like what you were thinking of doing?
No, I was the most naive, 19, 20-year-old. I just was like, I took my first anthropology class and kind of fell in love and had that thing of like, this is great. I'll just, I'll start reading all these theorists and loved it. And it was only in senior year where we all kind of looked at our professors like, so what do we do? and genuinely they went, well, the US Army hires a lot of anthropologists. That's
they do? Really? For what?
Because I mean, the best way to like, I guess, beat your enemy is to really understand like the deep details of their culture, like what is shameful for them and what are their, weaknesses and what do they value and really love. Like if you can understand that, you can really get inside their head and mess with them.
It's the same thing with war, just like with Facebook or Twitter. It's the same kind of platform, right? Attacking people's psyche.
Yes, yeah, and there are anthropologists working at places like Facebook and Twitter too. But yeah, the U.S. Army hires a lot of them, and we also, and so it was that or graduate school. We were like, I think I'm gonna go look for jobs somewhere else.
That's funny. I really enjoy your website and your I don't know if I could call it a blog, your digital garden and your digital essays. It's really inspiring the way that you create these illustrated metaphors. Do you mind just brushing up on those like a little bit, just telling us what that's about and what you do with those and why you put those up there? And then we'll dive into a little bit more what a digital garden is and how it's been around since the late 90s and how you're using it.
Sure. So I'm kind of known as like a visual metaphor nerd is the way I would best describe it.
You're on the right show.
Yeah, good. With my work at Egghead, when I first got started there, most of what I was doing was we released courses about essentially front-end web development. So they're on things like, callbacks in JavaScript, right? Or like state management in React. These are kind of the topics we cover. And I came on as the illustrator. And, it's like for every course we put out, I started making illustrated artwork that goes on top of it. So my job from the beginning was how do you represent really abstract programming concepts in something that someone can see? And is meaningful. It's not just like, a robot holding a React logo or, like a bunch of gears and some other frameworks logo. But I really was like, okay, how do you, come up with a metaphor that actually means something and communicates what is essentially just like abstract concepts and syntax, which was a really wonderful challenge and got me to really get to explore really deeply how you design a metaphor, how metaphors work. You can see something there. Really how you come up with meaningful visual symbols for otherwise abstract concepts. So some of the work is these course illustrations I've made for Egghead, and then that eventually turned into doing a lot more what I would call illustrated essays, where again I'm taking concepts that are difficult or at least complex if you're not a developer. Like I did one on what are APIs, which if you're not a developer, everyone's like, what do you mean an API? What do you mean it's like one program talking to another? Is this like an interface I can click on? Is this like a thing I send as a link in an email? Like, what are you talking about APIs? So I did this illustrated essay that explains APIs through the metaphor of robot waiters who bring you data and you can only say certain things. You can ask them for certain things that are on the menu. So I learned about this idea of metaphors what we say, they hide and highlight certain things. So you have a thing you want to represent, which is like APIs, and the metaphor is like the lens you're going to view them through. So that's like robot waiters. And robot waiters, we can say, will have certain qualities, right? Like they'll bring you something, they give you a menu of selected options, and there's nothing you can't order off the menu. And then we map, right, the qualities of that onto the API and go, okay, I get it now. APIs bring you things, and you can only ask them for a limited set of things. So it highlights the things that those two things have in common, and it hides all the things they don't. So there's tons of details about APIs that you're not going to get from that essay, because it's like the details of REST versus SOAP versus GraphQL. Like it doesn't go into that. And there's tons of qualities about a hypothetical robot waiter that aren't included in the essay, because those two things don't share those qualities. So like robot waiters, right? They might like wear a bow tie. Okay, that like isn't that essay, or or like they get paid a salary that has nothing to do with APIs. So like those qualities are hidden, and only the qualities the two things share that overlap are highlighted, and those are the things you draw attention to. So it's kind of how metaphors
work. The anthropology side coming into play there.
Yeah.
I also want to point out one thing I love so much about all of your, at least all of them I've looked at as a source code browser. You put wonderful alt text with all of your images, or most of them that I've seen anyway, and which is great because accessibility. Having an image and a fancy graphic is great, but if like people can't see it, can't understand it, then it's
we don't get a lot of that or enough of that.
Yeah, it's great. It's especially hard with, complex illustrations to put the right text in there.
Yeah. I do try to make sure, like now you're making me think I should double check all the images, but I swear there are a couple times I've gone through my site, just made sure, right? I'm like, okay,
I'm going to go
check
right now. Make sure.
We'll have the audience do that.
Okay, yeah, good. If you find one, like really, like my site's on Git, like please, like log an issue or PR fix it. Like it's totally fine.
Yeah, I like the Meat Planet one a lot too. You somehow made something that's kind of gross, which it is gross. No, it is gross. Meat is generally, I don't know what word, gooey. You made it not that gross to look at, which is good.
Good. For that one, it's kind of funny. Like I've been vegetarian for well over, maybe it's like over a decade now. I forget when I first really went. It's like a decade. Anyway, that essay is about cultivated meats, right? Growing meat in labs. Like we won't really have to kill animals. And this idea we're just going to grow it through in bioreactors and fermentation tanks, which is really cool. I'm following the cultivated meat industry sort of as a fan. But to make that essay, which is all about that, I had to just like download the most grotesque meat photos. Like I have a reference folder that's just like butcher shops of blood, and there's just like guts everywhere. And, like,
when the FBI looks at your computer,
they're gonna be like, "What
person?"
Yeah.
Sure, you're an anthropologist.
So it's good. As a vegetarian, I have an extensive collection of very meaty reference images.
That's a great quote. Extension of very meaty. That reminds me about one of the things I saw on, what was it, Learning with Jason, where you were on there. You were drawing. I think you guys were coming up with ideas for some sandwiches. And you had such amazing, like, just to see your process of going through this and like thinking about everything, and then the finished results. It was really cool to see that. We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, that one was fun. Jason's wonderful, and like, I mean, he's incredible with running that show. I think like almost every single day he's like got someone else on, and they're like exploring some wild new idea. Anyway, it's a great show if anyone is interested in web dev.
Yes, absolutely. We'll put a link to that. Yeah. Watch Jason's show. Yeah, we had him on a few months ago. Great guy.
Yeah, let's circle back to, we mentioned we'd circle back to what is a digital gardening. Yeah. What is that?
So digital gardening is the hot new buzzword of 2021, or maybe 2020.
From 1990s.
Yeah. It's funny because so the term first came up in the 1990s as part of like, it was right in the beginning when they were trying to figure out like what hypertext was, right? The web's exploding. How do you get people to navigate the space? How do you teach them that like blue underlying text means you should click on it? Like that's a thing, you should teach people that. So it was sort of figuring out how do you get people to navigate through hypertext space. And people were using this metaphor of gardening, right? So you're going to have like garden links, and they're going to be like wiki gardeners. It was sort of the beginning of wikis and becoming a really popular thing. So that was like very early on. There was all this kind of noise about it. And it didn't really become like digital gardening as a concept until 2015 was kind of this point where Mike Caulfield, who goes by Hapgood on Twitter, who's like an incredible thinker in terms of like what is the web and how do we relate to it, and trying to advocate for wikis and personal websites and people really building their own space online. And he now works in like disinformation studies. Anyway, he wrote this long essay called The Garden and the Stream, which was about this idea that the web used to be, we would say, topographical. So like kind of like geographical space. Like early GeoCity sites was very much about like sites in relation to each other, and everyone built their own weird little website and they linked to all their friends, and you were very much browsing space. Yeah. Web rings, right? And you kind of knew where things were. They stayed stable, right? You could go to someone's website and it would be the, they might have updated it, but you knew where it was, and like you knew if anyone else went to that website, you saw the same thing. And then I forget what year they like cite this to. It was whatever year that Facebook brought in the news feed. Was it like 2006? I'm going to try and remember my history. Anyway, we got this new concept of the stream, right? Where you sit back and a stream of content is delivered to you. And your stream is different to everyone else's stream, and you can't see each other's streams, right? So you're like all having a different experience of the web, and it's constantly moving. So you can't. Oh, Chris Aldrich is great. He's he knows a ton about this too. So actually listen to him more than my spiel on it. But anyway, things come to you, and everyone gets a different stream, and you now have a web that's constantly moving and is time chronologically based.
Oh, yep. 2006.
Yeah,
right.
Good. 2006.
Thank you.
The New York Times actually just made a film, like, was it last week or this week, with the same concept. They didn't necessarily reference Mike Caulfield, but they probably should, and other people who've been working in the space. But they were really the ones like advocating this idea way back in 2015. And so this is a long way of saying gardening is this idea of getting back to the spatial topographical web. Hi, Chris. Where we are building our own personal spaces online that are not on the servers of companies like Twitter and Facebook. Not there's anything like, inherently wrong with them, but it's just you don't own the content, and they're in charge of what you see, and algorithms are running who sees what, and it's really hard to find your way back to content or to verify who's seen what. Like, we can't tell. But coming back to this idea of you have your own space, you control it, and it's your own space to put up what we would call like personal knowledge. So it's less, posting. I mean, you can post blog posts about what you really want, but a lot of it is people are posting ideas that are in progress and half-finished things, and you're just trying to cultivate kind of your own personal wiki on the web. Avoid walled gardens. There's a little graphic of it. So I drew little illustrations for kind of the 6, what I call design patterns of gardening in that post.
Yeah, that's a perfect visual metaphor for the walled gardens. Like you can't, your plants can't spread and grow and expand because you're stuck in this like box, which it's perfect.
And that's the thing about people. We change, we grow. It's not about, I'm going to put out a post that's evergreen. It's just we are a term, if you want to say that, evergreen. But we have ideas, and those ideas evolve. Not only do they change or sometimes pivot, but sometimes they just get better. And why do we need to have these things that are stuck on Medium forever that don't evolve, right? I mean, we could revise it, but do we need to be held to something that we said 20 years ago when the technology changed or some other pattern changes, right?
Yeah. So yes, it's very much about updating your ideas, because gardening, this idea is like you're constantly tending your digital garden. So yeah, you can put up an idea. And it might not be perfect. You're putting up what you know so far, and you have to be, transparent about that. So a lot of people will put tags on their posts, like, half finished, or just an idea, or like I use the categorization of, I'll say I have seedlings, I have budding, and I have evergreen. And evergreen means like I really thought it through. I've edited this thing, I've revised it a ton. It's really kind of like solid. Budding is like it's kind of getting there. I've like given it a first pass, like it's still not perfect. And seedling is like I'm like chucking up notes. They're half finished sentences. Like this is just like I've just had this idea and I'm trying to figure out what it is. So people have different levels of this. And another person I'll say who does this really well, and he's kind of like internet famous, right? Is Gwern.net, is like a really old school blogger who's been around for ages. And he puts everything from like his certainty level on a scale of 1 to 10, how important he thinks the thing is. When he started it, when he finished it, a whole Git log of when it's changed. He's like all this wonderful metadata giving you like visibility into how the post came to be and what stage it's at and where he thinks it's going. And it's just this idea of us all wanting more metadata about information on the internet, right? We're not just like looking at something and being like, oh, this is like some finished thing someone's thought through, but having space for imperfect things and things that will be revised to be able to live on the web too.
Yeah, and it reminds me a lot. I wish I could remember the quote verbatim, but essentially someone talked about planting a garden, how you plant your different plants throughout your whole garden bed, and you have this like vision of how it will look. But then as it grows, chaos turns it into something that was much more beautiful than you originally intended. And with removing the walled gardens, you spread it out. So I may take some of your concepts, do something of my own, and it just keeps spreading. And then we end up something much better than if it was just on Facebook.
Yeah. And it is also in the building these on the open web in HTML, CSS, maybe a little bit of JavaScript. That's debatable. It gives us space to play. I like the idea of like playing with different kinds of links or different kinds of categories and ways of organizing things, and really that sort of creativity and interfaces that people had in the early web. Because then if you have a Facebook profile, you fit into their categories, right? You put your photo here. You put your hometown here and your gender here, right? Like you have to fit into the cookie cutter. And digital gardens, part of the philosophy, at least in the way that I understand it and think is important, is like that you get to just like play with. I mean, it does assume that you have some fluency with HTML and like the native tech of the web, but just to actually play with the medium and to be like, okay, I can put images anywhere, I can arrange things anywhere, and I can decide how I want to present these posts and link them together. So it feels to me like an opportunity to have a playground and to arrange things so that they fit your mind and the things you're exploring and the things you want to be, researching and who you want to connect to, rather than just like the same format everyone puts up on social media sites. Well,
do you have any kind of examples of something that you've done with this recently? For example, anything that you're like, this definitely couldn't have been a blog, a statement that I put out there and it's there forever. I've been working on X, Y, and Z, and here's the value of it. Like if you could explain that to somebody like in a real example.
So wait, do you mean like a post I've made that went through like a number of revisions on the garden?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. Well, actually, honestly, I mean, this is very meta, but right, I have that post on the history and ethos of the digital garden, which I started writing a year ago. And when I say started writing, I mean, I put up a page that said the history and ethos of the digital garden and like chucked up some vague sentences and links to some gardens. And like, it was kind of just like a haphazard thing. Kind of like let it sit dormant for 6 months. People would sort of stumble across it and be like, oh, you should finish this. And I also put a little box I'll put on some of my posts that say coming soon. If you want me to finish this, bug me on Twitter to finish writing it. And I mostly pay attention to the posts that people tweet at me saying, hey, you should finish this. Then I actually go, I actually should finish that. But that post, I kept working on it and it would get revised and I would add different things to it. And I really only cleaned it up properly over the last like 2 months, which is like a year after like all the sort of hype had originally happened. But honestly, it kind of took me that long to be sure that like I fully understood what digital gardening was and kind of like was watching the trends of how people were trying to apply it and like what people really thought it was. And I just like didn't feel I could write that post until I had like kind of watched the community discuss it for that long and like hear all the different takes and kind of know who to link to and who should be credited for things. So I built it really slowly, like 20 minutes every 2 weeks or something working on it, which it depends on what kind of writer you are. Some people really can just sit down and write, but I'm a very slow writer. It takes me a long time to figure out what I'm saying and say it. So gardening appeals to those people.
Yeah, and like hearing you explain it and talk through it a little bit more rather than just reading it really makes it just like, I don't know, it makes me like happy to look at it now too, because I'm looking at your one of your most recent ones, well, on your site anyway. It's like highlighted the pattern language of Project Xanadu. I think I love like, you know, the draft in progress, and then there's a coming soon, and then you outlined it, so you have like, you know, the different sections below. Yeah, it's just so nice. It does really remind me of a wiki too, for sure, when you think about it, like how wikis tend to be very much always in progress, where you're adding you know, those individual pieces and chunks and outlining, and then coming back and expanding on it. It's almost like your own docs in a way.
And I like how you have this full history of digital gardening, and like you talk about like where it comes from, the origins in the 90s, and you go into everything, and you kind of highlight here all those things from the tweet as well, a lot more in detail here with what it is. You have all your illustrations down here. It's a long article, but like these are great. I mean, it's very much worth the read, to carefully read it too. I might add, there's a lot of great information in here.
Well, I'll say the community around it has been really wonderful. Like I mean, I've been on Twitter for a while, right? And like just found incredible friends and communities on there, and just like run into the most wonderful people and like had great professional connections. But the people who are sort of circling around digital gardening and tools for thought and Roam research is another big tool that like people kind of congregating around. And I wish there was like a more of a name I could give to this community, but it's just great. There's just this people are, you know, doing tweet threads on their understanding of gardening, and like linking you to really interesting, you know, like papers from the ACM from like 1994, you know, on like hypertext explorations, and it's just like community knowledge coming together. So I was like, everything I've written in there is really that other people pointed me to it, or they had insights, and I tried to cite as many people as I could. But I do like the idea that I'm the best I can do is be a cultural anthropologist who's kind of like helping a community tell their story. Like I would love if that was kind of my role in this whole weird mini historical trend we're in. The person just helps, you know, congregate it together. Here's
a great comment. Maybe you want to take this one, Brian.
Yeah, Nikki, if I say this wrong, I'm sorry. Nikki Dix says, I was originally inspired by Maggie's website. I've never enjoyed blogging, but I'm really excited to have a go at a digital garden, learning as I go. Even more so after hearing this. So thank you. Oh, that's great.
Good.
Yeah, she goes on to write, as a complete non-coder, just started using Roam. How much HTML do I need to learn, and where should I start? Maggie, I'll let you take that one.
Sure. Well, also to say there's another post on my garden called Digital Gardening for Non-Technical Folks. So that's like if you aren't interested in learning code and you like don't want to get, you know, into the HTML, there's a bunch of really great services and things coming up that you can use. And Roam Research is one where you can kind of use it as like a source for your notes. And there's a service called Roam Garden. I think it's roam.garden is the URL that will like source your Roam notes and turn it into a more presentational like website format, digital garden. But I've put in the post that you can also do it with Notion. Is becoming a really popular way for people who like don't want to touch code to be able to build gardens. And Obsidian is another tool that's doing it. So there's, I get a lot of great DMs from people who right now are building digital gardening platforms and systems, and there's some really exciting ones coming out that I'm kind of like hoping will come to fruition, that are maybe in alpha or beta at the moment. But I'll say over the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot more options for people who don't want to dig into the code side.
Yeah, I think there was a really good interview with you, and I forget what the gentleman's name was that you were on his show, where you talked all about Roam and then went into the details of that. I'll find that again, and I'll put a link in the show notes. Who was that? I don't remember, Maggie.
I'm trying to think of who it might have been, because there are a few.
Okay, I think it was a recent one.
Because Roam FM, I think it's like a Roam specific podcast. And then I was on, Robert Hasfield runs a number of Roam tours on YouTube, which I did. And I'm trying to think of what a recent one would have been that I told about Roam. Sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes. Maybe you could tell us what some of the biggest challenges that somebody might face when they start this? Like, is it just a thing where it's just super hard to get your head around it? Or maybe there's something else that I'm not thinking about. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges to overcome at this start?
I think people, justifiably do get a little caught up on what tool to use or what platform, because you're evaluating which one's right for me. Do I want to get into building this? If you know a little bit, maybe you know HTML and CSS, and you're kind of like, oh, do I want to start like a Gatsby? Mine's built on Gatsby, which is a JavaScript. I don't say framework, but thing where you can build a blog with it. Static site generator, that is the official term. Next.js is a similar one that has a lot of people, and Jekyll, these are all sort of website builders that have people who have built sort of garden-friendly themes that have kind of things like bidirectional linking, and maybe they'll have a graph overview of all your notes so people can kind of browse around them in a more visual way. So there's lots of really interesting themes being built if you're willing to go use code. So even just that is sort of deciding, am I going to go the more technical route, or am I happy with just using, Rome or Obsidian or Notion, something that's kind of, well, they're not all private companies, and I don't think there's too much risk really in putting your notes in one of those, as long as you have your own backup that is plain, markdown notes, because, you do say, right, we've all seen, long term in the web, companies fold and platforms go down. And as long as you have your own backup, it's kind of okay. Just to not put all your eggs in someone else's basket is kind of the principle. So yeah, I'd say picking the right platform. And then after that, it depends on if people are really clear on what their sort of niche or field is. I mean, that thing of when people always say, well, I don't know what to write about with blogging, right? They go I don't know what I would write about. And I think actually gardening helps make that easier, because you sort of just look at whatever you're reading at the moment and what you're kind of consuming, and it's easier to put up small notes for okay, this is one thing I've noticed from something I've read, and it's not a whole blog post, like a fully formed opinion where I know what I think. It's just this is interesting, I'll just post this podcast and some notes below it, or I'll just post this article and some notes below it. It takes the pressure off you to create something that is an opinion.
Yeah, I liked what you mentioned about tools, simply because I know that a lot of people get fixated on that and they bounce around from tool to tool and then never actually do anything. Just pick one thing, do it, and I think once you establish yourself and have a pattern, then you can explore other tools and but keep going with that one and be like, oh, this one actually may work better for me. But move forward.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm clicking through and browsing your site because it's just interesting. The fetishism and mechanical keyboards. I love that. That's great. Did you get one? Did you get a mechanical keyboard?
Yeah. So I got.
Nice.
You can't really see it. I'm bad at arranging.
Let me zoom in. Here we go.
No, we can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good.
I forget what brand it is. I should know, but it's great. It is one of those where I kind of went down the rabbit hole of researching mechanical keyboards, and then very clearly was this is so much fetishism is a very cultural anthropology concept of when you project human-like qualities onto physical objects, or you sort of mistake the object for a social connection. You're okay, if I get this keyboard, I'm gonna be a more socially competent person, or I'm gonna be more effective, and it's sort of you're trying to project human qualities on the object. So I actually have to write more on that piece. I've just only kind of written an introduction and been I'll come back here later.
Here, let's share mine.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Nice lights.
Yeah.
I think
Keychron. Yeah.
I have the same one as you then, because I recognize that orange escape key.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Nikki Dick said something else. I'm willing to learn code. In fact, I'd love to. I just never have. I'm about to start a MSc. So I was thinking of creating a digital garden of my learning. Do it. Definitely.
That's great. Now I kind of want to ask follow-up questions, what's the MSc about?
Yeah. Ask it. She'll answer.
Yeah. What is the MSc about? That's great. Because I love the idea of people open sourcing what's usually held behind academic walls, and not where you're putting up, I don't know what would really be copyrighted in an academic degree, but this thing of otherwise people have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get access to this knowledge. And if you can just take parts of it and put it up on an open wiki and just sort of give people entryways into your field of knowledge, I think that's really a wonderful thing to do.
Chris Aldrich, I'm probably butchering that. Said something nice too about, take a season or two. Oh, thanks, Frederick. Of using a tool before moving on to other fields. Yeah, that's
Very good.
That's nice. Yeah,
Good advice.
Good advice.
Yeah. Like a test garden, right? You could put up, 10 or 15 posts on something, and then if you find you don't like the platform, switch to something else.
Applied positive psychology and coaching psychology.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, that needs a garden.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, all that being said, it's not like you're saying blogs are the devil, right? It's just something very different. I'm just communicating that you're not stating that there's a line you shouldn't blog, but it's just a different thing, and it makes a little bit more sense. I don't know if it's fair to say in certain fields, like in our field, to where you could build up your technology and build up your ideas on these things, and you're not just putting something out and then it's supposed to be evergreen.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Now you're making me wonder exactly what the technical definition of a blog is, other than it's a web log, right? So because the difference that we would say between a garden and a blog is mostly about the blogs are usually chronologically ordered, right? So most recent to furthest in the past. And you sort of browse them in a very linear form. So it just doesn't. It's harder to find all the information that is like connected by relationships. Whereas gardens, you kind of want to arrange them by topics, and you want to make sure notes that are related to each other link together. So you kind of can, hop between topics, and it doesn't really matter when they were written as much. You're more interested in the content and how they relate, versus the blog is like time is the only thing that matters here, like up, down,
just like Nikki has here. It's blogs assume that they have to be perfect, and perfect again is the enemy of good, right? It's you're going to be just halted to do anything. So just get out there and seeding notes, show my learning out loud. Yeah, exactly. Show your learning out loud. People want to see how you think, and you should just get it out there. Don't be afraid to put something out there in the world and show your process and your progress.
Yeah. There's also, I'll mention Sean Wang is kind of the champion of this ethos. I don't know if you guys have had him on yet, but he's really into learning in public and has some really wonderful posts about the ethos of learning in public and different kinds of learning in public and different phases of learning in public. And he's also really into digital gardening, and it's kind of cool. So like, he's a good one to look at if you're interested in the idea of learning in public and how to go about that.
Okay, yeah, I will reach out to this person. We will get them on the show. That sounds great. So Brian, what do you think? Is it time?
I do want to mention one thing about your tech stack and your website. Fantastic. I love how you even kind of that's also like your living code digital garden. I'm curious how search, web mentions, and nested note folder is going.
and Brian, sorry. Before you say that, Nikki didn't catch that. Who was that we just mentioned?
Oh, Sean Wang, SXWY, I think is his moniker that he goes by. But Sean Wang, yeah, he's in the web dev community. But if you search learning in public, I'm fairly sure he's one of the first Google search results. He's been on this for a while.
Thank you very much, Maggie. Brian?
Oh yeah. I was asking how your new updates are coming, how's that's progressing. Because I'd love to see how you do web mentions, because I've seen a few people do it, and I'm curious.
Yeah, I definitely need to implement those. This is where, but being a mediocre developer really makes you a slow developer too. It's sort of like you stare at the problem for a while, and then you ask people on Twitter help. So web mentions, luckily, the people who are involved in the indie web, which Chris Aldrich, who's hanging out here too, he's a wonderful advocate for the indie web, and they have really great docs about how to put web mentions in. So I know I've bookmarked a bunch of those, and kind of need to just set aside a Saturday and read through them and figure out how to put it in.
Are you gonna write a little essay about it?
Yeah, I'll put up notes on how I'm doing it. I don't think it'll be too hard. Part of me is a little worried about I have to make my website more spatial, and then it's still pretty linear in the posts, and so at the end you kind of get my references, and then you get notes that are linked to this note, and then I think I'll put web mentions below that, and you just start stacking everything, which is kind of fine. But I'm trying to think of ways to put sidebars in, or move the metadata somewhere else. So I'm playing with ideas.
Cool. So yeah, as Frederick was saying, we're towards the end of the show, and what we do is a lightning round. where we ask you questions, and it's like one after another. I go, Frederick goes, and you just answer through them. You have lightning just like that. I'll go first. Would you rather be able to copy and paste in real life or undo?
Ooh, undo.
Okay.
That's fair. Maggie, what is your favorite thing about yourself? Honestly.
I'm British and I'm unqualified to answer that question. We're legally not allowed to.
Okay. What's one pet peeve of yours that you wish you could just get rid of, that you have that because it hampers your quality of life?
Ooh. I feel like I make too many cups of tea throughout the day. I don't know if that's a pet peeve. Wait, no, pet peeve is something that's annoying, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, bad cups of tea, maybe. Like I can't tolerate. I have too high of a standard.
Okay.
Earl Grey or what's your tea?
Just question. Like English breakfast. I can't stand Earl Grey. Like English breakfast, like milk, sugar. Like I'm very like standard.
Oh, so you're not getting down with the London fog. Gotcha. All right.
Okay, you're waiting somewhere. Where's somewhere that you're okay waiting? You don't mind waiting?
Anywhere that I have a book, which is anywhere I go.
Oh, nice. I like that.
Nice. What are you currently reading?
Ooh, it's a really good book. Let me just get. If Then by Jill Lepore, which is so it's the history of the very first company to try to do data collection in like the 1950s, and trying to map human behavior and put it into computers and then try to predict how people are going to behave based off that. And they were doing it in the context of US elections, and it sort of lays the foundation for everything that has now become Facebook and Google and Amazon.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really good.
I'm going to add that one to my list. Okay, you're in the circus. Would you rather be the person with their head inside the lion's mouth or be shot out of a cannon?
Shot out of a cannon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Would smell better.
Possibly.
Maybe.
You never know. Yeah. I mean, the lion could have some Bianca or something. What is your podcast that you've been going to lately just for entertainment?
Oh, I love Postlight podcast, which is Paul Ford, and I'm going to forget his co-host's name, but they run a digital agency in New York. But Paul Ford is like an incredible tech writer who's just everything he writes, I just kind of die over. But he's really funny, as is his co-host, and they just kind of do commentary on the tech world, but in a way where they're both very experienced and have been around forever, and I just appreciate their views.
Nice.
Oh, love that.
What's the one chore that you absolutely hate to do?
Well, in the UK we have lime scale in all our water, which like just covers any surface you have in just like weird white flaky stuff, and you just have to spend like all weekends just scrubbing it off, or it just builds up and destroys your flat. So I spend an inordinate amount of time scrubbing lime scale off everything. I just hate it all the time.
Maggie, favorite cartoon as a kid?
This is bad because I didn't grow up with television is the problem. I grew up in
well, let me revert. What's your favorite cartoon now?
Oh God, I'm not fun. I don't watch cartoons. I'm really bad at this question.
It's not a big deal.
It's all right. Pass.
I love Calvin and Hobbes, which is not a TV show, but that's a comic.
Oh yeah, I love
that.
Calvin
Still qualifies. Not qualifies.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I have so many of their books. I love them a lot. So Mars is livable, but it's a one-way trip. Would you go to Mars?
No, I really like Earth. I'm really here for the Earth. Like I'm really.
All right.
Yeah.
It's your thing.
Yeah.
Hey,
so far
we all have our
really
planets.
well.
We all have our planets. That's right.
Maggie, you come home. It's 1 a.m. You're just trying to get the key in the door. It's pouring out. You're like, just get me in the house. You get in the house. There's a ghost. It's looking right at you. What do?
Try to take a photo with my iPhone. No?
All right.
You can. That's your choice.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be very useful, would I?
Hold on right there. Let me get this on Instagram.
And I was thinking evidence, and I just went, oh my God, we're in the land of like deep fake videos. I don't know what an iPhone photo would have done for me there, but like.
Yeah. What's one thing you miss a lot about being a kid?
Ooh. Oh God, I'm really bad. I don't know. Sorry, I'm thinking of too many things. Maybe it was just like, I mean, I get really lost in just doing. Maybe it was pre-internet days. I don't know. I just get really lost in doing things like organizing my entire Beanie Baby collection, like categories or something, or just like cutting and pasting 1,000 strips of paper together. Like it was, yeah, very much just like spending hours getting lost in very simplistic tasks in times before I was on the screen all the time.
I hear you. This is my last question. Maggie, what do you do that brings you joy? What do you do for fun? How do you disconnect?
It's definitely still drawing, even though it's part of my career or profession or whatever it is with like doing over here working. It's still like if I need to decompress for the day, I'll like put on like a YouTube lecture of someone I really like. But then I'm doodling, and it's not to show anyone or to do. It's just sort of me trying to think with my hand and my body, which is really satisfying.
I do have a follow-up question, but I'll let Brian go first.
So, what kind of drink can be bitter and sweet?
Wait, what kind of drink can...
Realty. So anyway, Maggie, this might be might not be a lightning round question, but for the people that want to do kind of like what you do, where do you find that you're the most creative and you get the most done in which medium? So when I say that, I mean, is it when you put pen to paper, when you put a pencil to your iPad pencil, or when you're in Illustrator or Figma or something like that? Where do you feel like you're the most creative and why?
Yeah, I definitely use an iPad with Procreate on like an iPad Pro is kind of my medium for the moment, just because it has the most flexibility. It doesn't feel just like paper, but it's getting there. It kind of does what you need it to. And that space, it just being able to use your hands and think spatially and look at what you're drawing and respond to it in a constant feedback loop, right? It's not like you create the image in your head and then you draw it, but this relationship between you and what you're creating in this constant loop is like kind of where the thinking happens. I know that's like a famous Richard Feynman quote that someone asked him, like, how did you come up with the ideas of when he drew like atoms and stuff? And he's like, no, I found like it was part of the process with me and the paper. It wasn't like I came up with them and then drew them down. Like I didn't know what they were before I drew them. That loop is like a really magical process to be in. And that's kind of the thing I'm always addicted to. It's just like you don't know what you're doing until you see it on paper, and then you respond to what you've made, and it just becomes this infinite game.
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try it one more time. Why is Peter Pan always flying?
I don't know.
Because he never lands.
Oh, ugh.
That is good. Now you're making me think there's more layers to Peter Pan than I originally perceived.
It's deeper than we all thought.
We're right at the end. We want to make sure that we put up all the places where people could find you at, Maggie. So on the Twitters, the LinkedIn here, and your website, of course, maggieappleton.com. Dribble with your first initial, your last name. Is there anywhere that I might be missing here that you want people to look up to find more about you?
No, not that I can see. I think that's pretty good. My website I try to make it at least a hub that will link to anywhere else that needs to be linked to.
Yeah, for our audio listeners, it's can you put that back up so I can reference it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's Mapletons. It's spelled Mapletons for her Twitter, and Maggie, Maggie, Appleton.com for her website. And yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, before we get to that, before the last thing we like to do is offer an opportunity for some final of wisdom. Maggie, at the end here, do you have anything to say to the audience? Chair is yours.
Ooh, the only thing I can think of to like recommend that I would just want to say, if anyone doesn't know who Brett Victor is yet and hasn't read his work, worrydream.com, go do that. That's just like a life-changing experience if you've never experienced Brett Victor before and you work in tech. So that would be the only thing I'd recommend.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Cool.
And Nikki had a good time. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and appreciate you joining us. Time, I always say, is the most valuable thing we have, and for you to spend some time with us, thank you so much.
Yeah, especially on a Saturday.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's fine. Thank you for all the great questions too. This was incredibly easy. You always worry you're going to come on and say stupid things or just like have no content, and you guys are just great questions. Made it super easy.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. No, this was excellent. Thank you so much, Maggie, and thanks everybody out there for watching. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.
See you,
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.
See ya. And